Today I take a look at one of the scariest clowns ever put to film. Hello and welcome to RotD Review of the Day, and today I am taking a look at the 2017 movie Terrifier, featuring Art the Clown. Now, Art the Clown is a character villain slasher that has existed for a little while now. I kind of did some backstory research on this, and Terrifier started out as a short film in 2011, then as a kind of a recurring character in All Hallows Eve, which was an anthology series. But this is the first time that I can see where he is front and center in his own movie, full length, and it blew me away. I will say two major things. First of all, Art the Clown is now my favorite evil clown in any movie ever. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to take a back seat, Pennywise. Art the Clown has trumped you, and I really, really loved this character for a number of reasons that I'm going to get into when I get into the categories. But the second major statement I will make is there's a number of reasons why I love horror movies. I love cerebral horror movies that require a lot of thought and introspection and after the fact research, like Mother, not necessarily a horror movie, but definitely has some horrific elements to it, but falls under that category. I really, really like haunted house, spooktacular movies, 1963's The Haunting, 1973's The Legend of Hell House, even up to, Gojiam Haunted Asylum. And I love a good slasher movie. And for me, that has to follow a fairly, I'm not going to say a rigid criteria, but a certain set of rules to at least not necessarily be successful, but to have the most impact as a slasher movie. And I would say that this hit all the right notes. The statement I will make is this movie is a fantastic representation of why I love horror movies. I'm a big fan of movies in general. I am a cinemaphile. But if somebody were to question me on, why horror movies? What do you get out of them? This is a movie that I would kick on and show them this is why I love the genre. Terrifier is a perfect example of why I love this, and if you don't get it on the same level I do, then we're just not going to see eye to eye on it. Let's to kind of dissect this a little bit more and to discuss the movie, let's get into the categories. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot of this one was fairly sparse. It definitely got the lowest score of the bunch. But I mean, that's all right. This is a slasher movie. Plot heavy is not necessarily the name of the game. I mean, I'm going to judge it, as a horror movie, not as a slasher. But given that, I gave the plot 7 out of 25 points. Just not a whole lot to be had there. You had a young woman and her friend who starts being stalked by the Art the Clown, and in doing so, they wind up on his path of terms of a rampageness, and anybody else that happens to kind of meander into the scene is also now in his crosshairs. I mean, that's pretty much it. They wind up in a kind of an old warehouse that is being fumigated, and that's where primarily a lot of the slasher action happens. You have a homeless woman that was residing there. You have the person that was fumigating. Basically, you have cannon fodder for Art. And so not terribly plot heavy, but it doesn't need to be. This is a slasher. One of the big things about making a slasher is it's okay to turn your brain off. Really is fine. Don't feel guilty about it. Just, enjoy what is on the screen. So, but judging it in a fair review, stacking it against all horror movies with a consistent scoring system, plot 7 out of 25. Now, the intent of this one, I really think that the intent of this one was for the director to showcase this character that he's worked so hard at creating and cultivating. Like I said, in 2011, he was in a short film called Terrifier, then in the All Hallows Eve anthology movie, which I haven't seen yet on either account, and I really need to go back and do that, and I absolutely will, and we will review it here. But so this is my first foray into the character, and I think that was kind of the director's point, was to take this character that had been kind of a little bit underground and bring it to the forefront with his own feature-length motion picture, his own storyline, not anthology, and introduce him to the masses. And I'm really glad he did. Beyond that, I think the intent was to just be a brutal slasher movie with this, well, like I said, this character that he's worked so hard to cultivate. And I would say that on the whole, it was wildly successful. The slasher elements to it were amazing and fantastic and creative and brutal and gory and bloody and everything that I look for in a slasher movie. The character of Art the Clown was phenomenal. From the time that he hit the screen, it was electric, and every scene that he was in throughout was just ramping that up. The character, as simplistic as it is, and that's another criteria, loose criteria for a slasher, is simple. Simple is better. Michael Myers didn't have a reason. He didn't have, he just was. And, the more backstory, the more reason you give it, the less impact that has. Art the Clown was very simple. He was a clown that had this very dark, macabre sense of humor. Not only did he engage in these destructive acts, but he had such a lavish sense of humor about it, but at the same time, like this layer underneath of absolute disdain. He could go from complete joyousness and just mocking his victims, while at the same time, in the next second, just looking at them like they are the lowest of the low, and I am going to gut you. And it was very impactful. The character himself was really well managed. So the intent, I gave a 23 out of 25. Very, very impressive. The acting, I think everybody did a pretty phenomenal job in this, but it's not going to be a huge surprise when I say that Art the Clown, played by David Howard Thornton, was the standout. He was able to bring so much to the role without saying a single word. Honestly, he's, it's a subsection of clown, but he's less a clown than a mime. But I prefer to think of him as a clown than a mime. I refuse to go onto my channel and say that a mime gave the best performance of the group. So the clown, Art the Clown, did the most amazing, phenomenal job. Not a single word spoken. And dedication to the craft, not even screams when he was getting hurt or, stabbed or something. It was just silent screams. And I loved that touch to it. But the facial expressions, the body movement, the mannerisms, everything David Thornton was able to throw at this character was wildly successful. And apparently he did have mime training, which is one of the reasons he got hired to play Art the Clown, and it really showed through. It was absolutely one of the most highlight pieces of this film, and I gave the acting 20 out of 25. Very high marks. When we're talking about a mindless, turn your brain off and enjoy the gore slasher movie, we aren't really expecting necessarily to get such phenomenal acting, and so many times our antagonists, our villains, are basically just 6'5" lumbering hulks with a blade, and very much not the case in the Terrifier series here. I really, really liked him. And the technical, I knocked down just a little bit more. They really aimed for the stars here, and they tried to accomplish some really very intensely gory and difficult to set up scenes. And most of them were fairly successful. However, you could see the limited budget shine through in many of them. So it raises a good, philosophical question as far as reviewing a movie like this. If somebody is aiming for the stars and happens to hit the moon, do you knock them down more than somebody that just never tried in the first place? I honestly, I want to award them, for the effort, for the try. And, like I said, in a lot of cases with this film, they were really successful at what they attempted. Some of them, I think, were probably just a little bit too gruesome, too out there, not for the sake of sensibilities, but maybe for the sake of the budget and what they were trying to accomplish with the resources that they had. But okay, so the technical I gave a 17 out of 25. Knocked it down just a hair, but I really did appreciate what they attempted. It wasn't so bad that I want to take a lot of points off. It was a little noticeable. That was all. So that gives us a total score of 67 out of 100 points. And I really, really, really recommend this movie to anybody that loves the slasher genre, that loves blood and gore. This is absolutely a great, great movie for you. And I find myself in a weird position because I want to sum this up by saying that as much as I love this movie and as much as I love Art the Clown, and as much as I think that I will be watching this movie repeatedly, I think this may be like an annual event for me. My only real thought is I kind of hope that it stops here. I kind of hope that they don't make any sequels and run this into the ground by adding backstory, by adding exposition. But at the same time, if they don't, then it's basically just making the same movie over and over, and kind of what's the point of that? So maybe this one is best left alone. Just, as good as it was, as good as Art the Clown was, maybe it's time to just retire it and move on to something else, a different character. Take those talents and put them into a different project. If they do wind up making a sequel, I hope that they take my fears and prove them unfounded. So that should about do it for this one. I really appreciate you joining me today. And next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.